last couple of days have been pretty cold. Got down as low as 5 degrees Celsius a couple of times this past week. And I was just saying to Emmy yesterday that I'm finished with the cold. But today, as I walked around the garden, seeing these wonderful signs of spring everywhere. Look at those lemons. Actually, to be fair, the lemon tree's been doing a pretty good job for the last couple of weeks. But this is the beauty of a Queensland winter. Wouldn't say we won't get another cold snap before the end of it, but it does not get much better than right now. I'm guessing the temperature's somewhere around 15 or 16 degrees. That's gorgeous. G'day, I'm Roland Hearn, and this is A Walk in the Garden. Ultimately, there's been two foundational ideas that have been running in the background of this entire journey of this walk in the garden, and I have indicated those things in a variety of ways, but they have always been there, and those two things are, of course, that in life we are seeking to be loved, and thus seeking to experience worth, or you can say that the other way around, and that everything that we do, everything we understand, everything that we feel and experience is shaped through our sense of identity. Our identity frames everything for us. There is an issue that I haven't addressed in our walk in the garden, that reflects these two things incredibly importantly. And because the walk in the garden is actually a journey to try and understand ourselves, understand others, and understand our relationships, this issue is incredibly important. It is the issue of conflict. What do we do with conflict? How do we handle conflict? Well, I want to give four very brief keys to dealing with conflict in our lives. It's unavoidable that we will have conflict. It's unavoidable because of those two things that I spoke about before. And you'll see why as I unpack these things. But how we manage conflict is incredibly important. Some people are more naturally bent to being able to deal with conflict in good ways and have good outcomes. Others have a tendency to move towards self-destruction in the middle of conflict. And to be honest, the reason I'm chuckling is because in life that has been my tendency. But here's the four things that are really, really important to understand about conflict, or how to deal with conflict, built on those two foundational ideas and reflecting of our key components. Love and worth are two sides of the same coin. The search for meaning is a search for worth, and the struggle with shame is a struggle with worthlessness. The first thing when we're in a conflict situation is to seek to understand all of the parameters of that conflict. What's actually going on here? The most important one in the middle of that is that because we are seeking love and worth, when we communicate to each other, we are looking for acceptance and validation, whether we understand that or not. And so when we walk into a conflict situation, we are actually dealing with our desire for love and worth, and that situation, that topic, that construct that's being argued about, or there's conflict around, actually reflects that search. So understanding how the other person is experiencing that conflict and what is the parameters, or what are the issues involved with their worth and their search for love that are being reflected in the way they see things, that brings about that perspective. So even if it's a conflict situation in a fairly non-relational environment, say a work environment or something like that, we are still seeking worth and honor. And so what we need to know is, how is the other person experiencing worth in that situation? So the second thing flows on from the first. My opinions, my thoughts are not the same as my identity. I am not defined by what I think. Who I am shapes what I think, but having thought those thoughts and expressed those ideas, that is not the same as who I am. And for me, that was an incredibly difficult idea to get my head around. The importance of that is that being wrong doesn't say anything about who I am, and it doesn't say anything about what I'm worth. Being able to hold my opinions loosely becomes an important representation of the process I am in of shaping my identity. When we hold on to things very, very tightly, because we believe that not only reflects who I am, but flows from who I am, that it is a representation of who I am, that opinion is me. And I'll say again, our identity obviously shapes those things, but our opinions are not the same as our identity. And having expressed something and put it out there, allowing myself the freedom to be wrong is incredibly important in a conflict situation. So the third one, it just flows on immediately from what I just said, that my worth is not connected to being right. The more that we invest our identity in our ideas, the more we need to be right. Otherwise, we will experience worthlessness, and we're guarding against that sense of worthlessness. In fact, we're guarding against shame. And so when I presume that my worth is connected to being right, then I will hold on to my opinion incredibly tightly. And the more that a person argues for a point, even in the presence of a great deal of evidence for the contrary, and that happens all the time, people will make enormously strong cases, or attempt to make enormously strong cases, despite the fact that all of the evidence reflects a different direction. That is because we have connected our worth to being right, because we've connected our identity to our opinion. It's such a beautiful day. Dogs are out running around, the birds are flying, and of course the dogs are barking at the birds. That's what that noise was all about. And the last one is this. What causes conflicts to lead to broken relationships is shame. So love is always inviting us into deeper relationships. When our identity and our worth is connected to our opinions, then those defense mechanisms that we have to protect ourselves from feeling worthless get thrown up, and those are driven by shame. And so as a conflict is allowed to develop to the point that we break relationships or reduce relationships, it becomes very, very important to recognize that what's actually happening is we are indeed struggling with our shame, struggling with our own worthlessness, and to step back and to recognize that our relationships are the most important things in the world. Being right is not the most important thing. And that was incredibly difficult um, thing for me to realize because I invested so much of my own worth and identity in being right. That doesn't mean you have to accept things that are wrong, but just scale back the extent to which you need the other person to accept and validate your opinion. You don't need that. Your worth is not connected to that other person accepting your position. And so the more that our identity is connected with our opinion, the more our worth is connected to our arguments, the more shame will rise, our defense mechanisms will get up, and we'll start doing things that marginalize or minimalize either the opinion of the other person or even their personhood, their character, their identity. Insults come out of that space. And so we seek then to win arguments by marginalizing and minimizing the other. That is shame at work. And so as soon as we find ourselves moving into that space where we're saying, I have to win this at all costs, we are operating in the area of identity. And if we want to overcome the problems that we have with conflicts, if we want to manage conflicts, not win them, but manage them so they're not destructive, then we have to step back from all of those things that are connecting our worth with our opinion. Does that mean we can't have opinions? Does that mean that we can't present them? No. It just means that we find a way of honoring and valuing the other in the middle of that process and accepting, finally, that whether or not they agree with me doesn't change my worth as a human being. And so there's the process that we walk through as we are in the middle of conflicts. It's a good idea to have those four things thought through beforehand, because pretty much always conflicts happen. They sneak up on us, and we're in the middle of them before we even know it. So I hope that you find that a little helpful today. And that certainly has been helpful for me across the years. And I seek to operate in that space. I don't always succeed, but that's where I want to be. Well, thanks for being with me this week, and I hope that we can get together again next week. Until then, keep walking in your garden.